All right, good morning and welcome to the Tuesday morning live stream brought to you by Dropsite News. I'll be joined by my colleague Sharif Kouddous today. Some programming notes at 10 o'clock a.m. Representative Khanna of California will be joining us to talk about a range of issues, but in particular, a letter that he has been circulating calling for the recognition of statehood for Palestine. He has collected so far 20 signatures and tells me that this act that he's taken may be the thing that's gotten him more blowback than anything he's done before as a lawmaker in Washington. We'll talk to him about who he has gotten to sign onto the letter so far, what kind of opposition he's faced, and where it will go from here. Before that, we'll be talking to Dr. Tahir Ahmad, who is going to be actually joining us from Jerusalem, where he's working to help set up health centers in the West Bank. He previously has done a mission in Gaza. He is involved with the Palestinian American Medical Association, which works on evacuating people who are facing medical emergencies in Gaza and evacuating them to hospitals around the world. That obviously is now in the center of a controversy after Laura Loomer, who is apparently the second most powerful person in the United States, decided to put a stop to all evacuations from Gaza. Well, nobody comes from Gaza directly. They would have to go first to Jordan or Egypt, and then over here, the United States. Laura Loomer posted a photo of a few children, child amputees, said that this is outrageous, and the State Department stopped it within hours. So we're going to talk to Dr. Ahmad about what that means and what the actual scale of the need is in the situation. But before he joins us, one quick programming note: you all may have if you're subscribers to Dropsite, you may have noticed in your inbox a new product that we call Dropsite Daily. What this is a collection of our reporting throughout the day, much of it led by Herman Gill and the social media team, as well as our team of our newsroom of reporters. A lot of people, for very good reasons, have left Twitter or can't manage to follow Twitter because it is such a complete mess now that it's become X under Elon Musk. Our account is regularly facing varying degrees of suppression. It's obnoxious. It's the state of social media as it is. So what this does is it compiles all of our reporting into one place. So if you're not on there, and if it's just too difficult to sift through all the toxicity, this is a place where you can find all of our reporting. It's also a place that'll have links to primary source information, so that you can share this with friends and family. And if you don't want to get this, if there's too many emails, you can go into your settings, unsubscribe from this, and still get the rest of our reporting. If you don't get this already, highly recommend you go to dropsitenews.com and sign up for it. It's a truly remarkable product and a real testament to the work that the newsroom is doing. For now, let me welcome on Dr. Tahir Ahmad, who is, as I said, joining us from Jerusalem. Dr. Ahmad, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate it.
And I think we have Sharif, who just finished putting the finishing touches on Dropsite Daily this morning. Sharif, if you're able to join us too. Sharif, welcome. Good morning.
Yes. Good morning. Good morning. Thanks, Ryan. We just actually published the newsletter just now, so it's a daily roundup of everything. Most of our news, as with our regular news coverage, is about Gaza as the genocide continues to unfold. And today, actually, the official or the confirmed death toll, which is the death toll that the Ministry of Health puts out, which is widely acknowledged to be a vast undercount, but is very meticulously confirmed by the Ministry of Health. That death toll has topped 62,000 today, according to the Ministry of Health, as the attacks continue. And as we're seeing now, Hamas yesterday accepted the latest ceasefire proposal that is being mediated by Qatar and Egypt. And Israel has yet to respond, but it's coming as Israel is waging a massive campaign on Gaza City attacking neighborhoods and planning to ethnically cleanse Gaza City in its stated aims over the next few weeks, a plan that apparently will extend to other parts of Gaza, including Deir al-Balah and other areas in what seems to be the final solution for Netanyahu. So there is not a lot of hope for these ceasefire plans, but our colleague Jeremy Scahill is following them very closely. And as our readers know, he gets sources directly to see what the latest is. So we'll have to just see what happens in the next few days.
Yeah. And before we get to Dr. Ahmad, any other top lines from today's newsletter that you'd want to?
Well, I mean, there's a lot to talk about. I mean, another journalist was killed. It's hard to separate out. I mean, so many people are killed in Gaza every day. But of course, journalists are also specifically targeted, as we know, with the 6 journalists being killed last week, with the targeting of Anas Sharif, the Al Jazeera correspondent specifically. Last night, there was very heavy bombing in a neighborhood of Gaza City called Sabra, and the Palestinian journalist Islam al-Koumi was killed, and that brings the confirmed number of journalists killed since the start of the war to at least 239, which, as we know, is an unprecedented number. So that's, that happened last night. The Israeli military held kind of a high-level press conference yesterday with leading commanders. Defense Minister Netanyahu was also there. They declared the war at a, quote, turning point, and ordering an escalation or preparations for an escalation of the attack on Gaza City. Meanwhile, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which is the US and Israeli-backed group that took over so-called aid distribution on May 27th, launched what it called a pilot reservation system for food distribution that requires people, Palestinians trying to get aid from these 4 sites, to be photographed, and that their names would be entered into a database, and they would be issued ration cards for ID collection. This has been criticized by rights groups as, deepening surveillance and control of Gaza and weaponizing the distribution of aid. As we know, over 1,000 Palestinians have been killed, starving Palestinians, as they try and get aid from these so-called distribution sites, which are located in heavily militarized zones. Israeli soldiers on a daily basis now gun down starving Palestinians as they approach these sites, or they try and get food from UN food convoys. And I'll just say finally, I've been covering Gaza for a very long time, and the Ministry of Health has always been a very reliable source. And since the genocide began in October of 2023, they put out almost daily bulletins with the casualty counts. So you'll have, it's the beginning of the war, it was just every day, how many Palestinians have been killed, how many have been wounded, and then a total toll. And as the genocide continues to escalate in different ways, this daily bulletin now is broken down into more and more categories. So every day now we get the daily toll of confirmed death toll of Palestinians who've been killed over the past 24 hours. And this is just the bodies that have passed through public hospitals that they can confirm. Right. They also now break it down into how many were killed in aid massacres. So how many were shot or shelled or attacked as they were trying to get aid. So that's another one. They also now break down about how many bodies have been recovered. Every day, more and more bodies are recovered from under the rubble. There's presumed to be many, many thousands more that remain missing. So we keep getting these breakdowns. And then most recently, just in the past, I would say 3 weeks, they have started breaking down how many Palestinians every day are dying of starvation, of malnutrition. So this is just kind of a very stark way of how you can kind of track what's happening there by these horrific tolls and by the way the Ministry of Health is breaking them down.
And Dr. Ahmad, you were last there, correct me if I'm wrong, in January of 2024, have been closely involved in evacuations since then. And so what I hoped you could help people understand, I think there's a lot of confusion around this process of evacuations that involves, you know, WHO, UNICEF, COGAT, the Israeli agency, and if you don't get approved by Israel, it doesn't matter if you have all the other approvals, plus then visas from other countries as well as hospitals to bring you in. So from a high level, can you talk about what the scale of the need is at this point? My understanding is, at least among children, I think the list is well over 20,000, but that might be even, I don't know how far over 20,000. Like what does it take to get on to a list like this? And from there, what are your odds of getting out?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to first understand that before October 7th, there was a medical evacuation corridor that existed, where in 3-year span from 2019 to 2021, there were 285,000 Palestinians that utilized this system. And the majority of them were accessing hospitals in East Jerusalem, Al-Maqasid, for example, or the West Bank, Ramallah General Hospital. And so this was all coordinated through the Ministry of Health. The Ministry of Health was the one who was paying for this. And these are people who would be coming out of the Gaza Strip for cancer care, for cardiac disease, all of the things that couldn't be provided in Gaza. October 7th happens. This system is totally shut down. Nobody is able to utilize this system anymore. And in fact, what's instead taken place, especially up until the Rafah border was closed, what you're seeing is the international NGO system start to play into this, working with the local Ministry of Health in Gaza and trying to figure out who is your most urgent and critical patients. So all of these other patients who would need to be evacuated in the first place, think about people who get diagnosed with stage 3 or stage 4 breast cancer, or children who have some sort of congenital anomaly that needs to have some sort of surgery repair. We're not talking about them anymore. Now we're talking about people who have either been injured in an airstrike, who need critical care immediately, or people who have some severe disease that you're talking about imminent death. So this new list that was developed in conjunction with the WHO, the international NGO system, and the local Ministry of Health was utilizing the Rafah border in order to get patients out. And in fact, we were having such a tough time with where do you go next after you get to Egypt, that many of these Palestinian medical evacuees were stuck in Egypt, not getting definitive care and really in terrible conditions because the Egyptian healthcare system couldn't accommodate the influx of patients that were coming in. And then on top of that, what suddenly happened was on May 6th, I believe, 2024, I was in Cairo at the time getting ready to enter Gaza again. The Israeli military seized the border of Rafah, shutting it down. And so suddenly we had no access for people to be able to get in with these medical missions and bringing specialists in or bringing people out from this medical evacuation list. And even then, it wasn't efficient. I don't want to pretend like that system was working. If you remember, there was a famous clip of a father at the Rafah border ripping up his son's medical evacuation order because he had died. And he was yelling at the camera. He said, "He's dead now. Are you happy? He's dead." He's just ripping it up. Obviously, it was very tragic, but that was not an uncommon story. And so this list started to pile up because of the inefficiencies around evacuations. And really, it's just the most critically ill folks. And what would happen is you're showing up to a hospital, you've somehow survived an airstrike, a tank shelling, and a ground invasion, or you are so sick with some sort of tumor that keeps growing and is destroying your organs that a doctor then says, okay, we need to get you on this list. And he submits it to the Ministry of Health. The Ministry of Health shares it with the WHO. And then you get put on this list. And then COGAT, the Israeli arm that decides whether or not you can get in or get out, says that this person can be approved. Well, as you know, the most likely person to get approved in this process would be children. And the problem was getting a companion to be approved has proven to be exceptionally difficult. Whether it was, if you were a male companion, it was almost unheard of to get you to be approved along with the child that needed to be evacuated. And we started relying on governments to actually intervene in this process, especially after the Rafah border was closed. And so we need the government of Ireland to say they're ready to take 12 patients and they take these patients off of the WHO list. Or Jordan would say we're ready to take in these 10 cancer cases in pediatric populations. And so on and so forth. So the U.S. Was not a major player in this by any means compared to other countries. We were seeing, obviously, Europe had an appetite, especially in recent weeks. Foreign Secretary David Lammy had made that sort of this announcement in front of the General Assembly saying, we're ready to recognize the state of Palestine. We also want to take in more kids. We want to take in more patients from Gaza, give them the medical care that they need, as well as Qatar and other countries like Malaysia, Jordan, of course, we mentioned, and Ireland, Italy, France. All of them have started taking in patients, but the U.S. was not a major player. I personally brought in a patient back in June of 2024 to the United States. And this was a local effort with the help of Senator Merkley in terms of getting the approvals. And I'll tell you one specific nuanced issue that people don't realize. Most children in the Gaza Strip don't have travel documents. In fact, there are, I'd say several 100,000 people that never have that never got a passport issued. Of course, they probably have an Israeli military ID card that was issued to them, but an actual passport, no. And in fact, getting to Egypt, you had to just get some sort of a paper that was certified that said, you're a Palestinian that lives in Gaza and you're crossing into Egypt for whatever reason. So this 6-year-old who had her leg blown off in Gaza City that I was going to be bringing to the Northwest Pacific coast. I don't want to say where she went to, obviously, given the circumstances. But she was able to get this hospital to say, we're ready to take you. The senator was able to intervene and get the State Department to say, yeah, as long as she shows up for an appointment in Cairo, we'll be able to grant her this visa to come over. But we didn't have a passport for her. And when we were, the passport needed to be issued from the West Bank. And when we were talking to the West Bank about this, they're like, she needs to come over here. Like, we need to see her in person. So it was an incredibly arduous and bureaucratic process. And eventually we're able to climb those hurdles just in the nick of time, where she was able to be granted that visa. And the reason I mention her case is because her father had to remain in Gaza. Her father, who was also injured in this airstrike, had to be remaining in Gaza. So a lot of these people are getting evacuated. We're talking about families being separated. Even if the entire family gets out to Egypt, if they were, for example, to come to the United States, they're separated there. And this young girl and her mother had to travel to the United States to get this care that they needed. And they were able to get a 1-year visa from the State Department. And we were under the impression that if she needed to, she can get this visa renewed. And the problem is, what happens when these kids come to the United States through organizations like Heal Palestine or Palestinian Children's Relief Fund or some of these other US-based NGOs that are going through the regular processes, what we were doing, given the trauma, is we were asking the local community to show up and to meet them at the airport. Mm-hmm. And I think this right-wing troll on Twitter, X now, she saw the picture, and I was at one of these receptions. I think she saw the one at DFW in Dallas, and she also saw the one at SFO in San Francisco in the Bay Area. And what she's seeing is these kids who are being wheeled in wheelchairs. They still got these metal external fixators on the outside of their legs. And the idea was the community shows up, we try to welcome them, we try to support what's a very tough process. I mean, these kids are absolutely traumatized through all of this. And for the Secretary of State to come out and suddenly say, we're going to revoke these visas. Well, first of all, it was really hard to get a visa in the first place. Heal Palestine, the organization that Rubio mentions specifically, and Loomer tries to connect somehow to, to whatever group she tries to connect them to. They are a group that have been able to secure 70 kids in 22 months. There are 5,000 kids on this list right now, Ryan, like 5,000 urgent, emergent evacuations. Not to mention any of these other cases that need to be evacuated for other reasons. 5,000 kids that UNICEF says has to get out immediately to get the care, or they are at risk of dying. And so we've taken almost 70 of them through Heal Palestine and other groups. And for them to sort of essentially say, we're not going to issue these visas anymore, it's absolutely a death sentence. And it's a death sentence by a Secretary of State that's clearly been sidelined by this administration, right? I mean, he's not the one that's in Rome negotiating between the Russians and the Ukrainians. He's not the one talking to the Qataris or the Egyptians. Instead, he's here talking about revoking humanitarian visas for 5-year-olds and their adult companions, or, their family members, if their family members are still alive. And the last thing I'll say about this, just so people understand the scale of the tragedy. Do you remember that girl that was sifting through the flames that survived as her entire family burned to death? Well, she was one of these people that we were hoping to evacuate to the United States, and she made it to Boston. And to me, it's like this incredibly tragic story. And we're using this as an example to say there's an invasion of Palestinians. I mean, that's the word that was being used. Yeah. I mean, this child, almost her entire family burned to death because of U.S. bombs and U.S. fighter jets. I mean, that's the bottom line here. And so the fact that that's the sort of the language that's being used here, we're committing these people to death sentences.
And real quick, Sharif, before you jump in, you may know Ahmed Khan, who's a humanitarian philanthropist who has been involved in a lot of evacuations. I was talking to him yesterday, and to your point about not being able to bring a companion, he said that as far as he understands, not one single nuclear family has been granted evacuation status by Israel since the beginning of not one. Is that your understanding?
Totally. And I mean, this is kind of what I've been to Lebanon and seen different families be evacuated to Lebanon, obviously Egypt, Jordan, and the United States. And I've not seen that case just personally, and I've not heard of that happening. Even when we're talking about what's the likelihood that I can get this kid out of Gaza to get the care that they need, right away we know. We ask, do they have like a female family member? Because we know if it's like a father or uncle, it's not going to happen. So it's such a miserable process. And one thing I'll mention about that too is we don't want to separate these families. We also don't want to get these kids out of Palestine. We would love for that humanitarian corridor to be reestablished. The capacity is there to bring them to other parts of Palestine to be treated by Palestinian doctors and Palestinian nurses. But if this is what we have, of course, we'll use it, right? I mean, if they have to be treated by French doctors or British doctors, we understand, though, that the outcomes are not going to be the same as if they were treated by Palestinian doctors because of the language barrier, the lack of cultural awareness that exists, and just sort of the goals not being as aligned as you'd like them to be.
Dr. Thayer, I wanted to ask you about, I mean, this is something you work on very closely, your organization, that you're a board member of, the Palestinian American Medical Association, works on building healthcare capacity in Palestine. Can you just give us a sense of how the healthcare system has been systematically targeted in Gaza, as well as the West Bank, but so severely in Gaza, what your colleagues in Gaza are going through right now? I mean, they are also enduring famine and starvation. And just briefly, the ability for volunteer doctors such as yourself to be able to go work and volunteer in Gaza is becoming more and more difficult. You yourself were blocked from entering, I believe, in March of this year, a trend that is increasing and that we reported on, if you can explain that. And also OCHA, the UN agency, issued a statement just earlier this month calling on Israeli authorities to rescind some new requirements for all NGOs working in Palestine that they first published in March, that is severely hampering how these organizations can work. Sorry.
Yeah, but this is exactly how we need to understand what's happening in Gaza. There is an absolute policy of annihilating the healthcare system and the ability for people to heal themselves in Gaza, and it's from every possible facet. The actual structural infrastructure is being bombed, raided, destroyed from the inside by Israeli soldiers as they're sieging these hospitals. We've seen it take place at Al Ahli Hospital. We saw what happened to Shifa. We saw it at European Gaza Hospital, just to name a few of the 36 hospitals that we talk about. We also saw the detonation of the Turkish Friendship Hospital, the only cancer hospital in Gaza. Yeah, you can get cancer care at some of these other hospitals, but the Turkish hospital, Friendship Hospital, which had made strides in chemotherapy and cancer care, they literally charged it and detonated the entire building. It was a demolition. And why that happened, we never got an explanation for that to this point. The other thing that you're seeing is the killing, the abduction, and the sort of harassment of Palestinian healthcare workers. We know more than 1,000 healthcare workers have been killed. Almost every northern director of a hospital has either been killed or abducted. Marwan al-Sultan, one of 2 cardiologists in the north of Gaza, killed. Muhammad Abu Salmiya, the director of Shifa, was abducted and subsequently released. And Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya, director of Kamal Adwan, the only pediatric hospital in the north, abducted without charge, still in Israeli dungeons. And then we talk about how these healthcare workers specifically are not being paid, but also being starved just like the rest of the population. And they're being deprived of the materials that they need because those trucks are sitting outside of the border and are being blocked by the Israelis, whether that's because of a dual use list or because there's a suffocating siege, or there are settlers that are interrupting their delivery. So sterile gloves, scalpels, Band-Aids, alcohol, antibiotics, anesthetics, all of these things are in critical shortage all throughout Gaza. Some of them are at zero stock. And so you're hampering the ability of healthcare workers to be able to do their job. They're starving in the process. Some of them are injured in airstrikes or killed. And we're not even talking about the moral injury that you're going to endure 22 months of seeing your local community sort of be annihilated in the way that it has. And then we talk about, well, how do we practice medical solidarity? How do international doctors volunteer, try to support, stand alongside our Palestinian healthcare workers? And we're not able to do that. I was recently rejected June 19th as well. I talked to you when I got rejected March 13th. Before that, I was rejected in October 2024. And then on May 6th, when I was in Cairo, the border was stormed shut. So 4 separate times we had teams that would try to enter. And, OCHA and the UN are telling us that more than 50% of these volunteer doctors are being rejected. So let's kill and abduct the Palestinian healthcare workers. Let's blow off the hospitals. Let's not get them the supplies, the materials that they need. Let's make sure that no international doctors can enter and stand alongside them. And on top of all of that, let's not let anybody evacuate out of Gaza to get critical medical care needs, despite that's what's happening. So this healthcare system is not collapsing. It's collapsed. And it's collapsed because there is a giant standing on top of it, crushing it with his feet. I mean, that's the only way to understand this. And so, this is a very sort of targeted campaign to attack life in Gaza. And you can say the same thing about water infrastructure. You can say the same thing about shelter. You can say the same thing about food security, which we kind of touched on with the starvation. And you can say the same thing about agricultural land. I mean, you can just take a look at the maps of Gaza. And when you're thinking about it from a public health perspective and an emergency response perspective, you realize that it's impossible to sustain life in Gaza at the current pace that we're having. And so, I mean, do I hope that there's a ceasefire at play here? Absolutely. I hope that tomorrow it can be implemented. And I hope with the ceasefire, just like we saw during the temporary ceasefire, that there can be an increase in evacuations. We were seeing between 35 and 50 per day. I mean, even though it's supposed to be 50, the truth on the ground was oftentimes you're seeing about 30 to 40 of these people being evacuated for medical evacuations. But again, I mean, it's just a very grim situation here. And I don't think people recognize that this has consequences for generations to come, and that the amount of excess mortality, meaning unnecessary deaths, are going to continue to climb long after there's a ceasefire announced.
What remains somewhat mystifying to me, and maybe you've been able to sort through this, is that the Israeli government has made it clear that their goal is the mass depopulation of the Gaza Strip, and for many elements of the government, then resettlement of it. Why won't they let people leave? I know a lot of people who are involved with evacuations, and they're doing the Lord's work, and they're working day and night, also doing Israel's work in long-term strategically. Like, they want people to leave. So is it what you said, that it's going to produce so much unnecessary death and misery? Like, how do you sort through that apparent on the surface contradiction?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of things that I think about, at least. I mean, I think, for example, the Egyptian healthcare system, which would be a natural place you let Palestinians flow through. Any part of civil society in Egypt, it cannot and will not accommodate these Palestinians. For them, obviously, they view it as an existential threat. And from the healthcare system perspective, I don't disagree with it. I don't think they could handle an influx of Palestinians getting care there. And the Jordanians have a similar issue. I mean, we saw the king promise President Trump that he would take in 2,000 kids immediately. I mean, we're nowhere near that number. I think I'd be surprised if that number approached 100, but I don't really have that data ready at hand. And so the other part of this is, well, who's going to accept this? And one last thing I'll say is, the Irish, for example, their government had agreed to take in 20-some families, and they had agreed to do this around Christmas time of 2024. That actually didn't materialize until February because of all the different bureaucratic hurdles in place here. So I think that end is definitely at play here. And then the other end is that system that exists that keeps Palestinians under blockade has not gone away. Just because Gaza right now, there's an aggression on Gaza and there's these escalation of hostilities, doesn't mean that the blockade had somehow changed when it comes to these medical evacuations. And so as somebody who's been working in Gaza since 2008, I'm really seeing that same system at play here, preventing Palestinians from getting the care that they need. It's almost like, that one arm of the military is not speaking to the other arm, and there are kind of all these different systems and bureaucratic processes that are in place. And I still scratch my head. I'm like, why not just let them out if that's the case? I mean, you want them to leave. You're desperate to get them out of the land. They're only living on 12. Technically, they're only supposed to be living on 12%, right? I mean, 88% is under displacement order or Israeli military control. So it's such a bizarre hell that these Palestinians are facing.
Dr. Thaer, thank you so much for joining us today from Jerusalem. Thank you for all your work. Dr. Thaer Ahmad is an emergency medicine physician based in Chicago who volunteered in Gaza in the past, has been rejected from entering since then. He's a board member of the Palestinian American Medical Association, an organization working on emergency response and healthcare capacity building in Palestine. Thank you so much. And we're going to switch over right now to our next guest, who I'll have Ryan introduce.
So Representative Khanna from Northern California is joining us now. He is the author of a letter that has been circulating around Washington, D.C., collecting signatures. I think am I getting a little feedback there? Do you guys hear that?
Yeah, I think, Representative, do you have headphones perhaps you could wear? I think it's hitting.
Right.
It's reverting.
I don't have headphones, but I'm moving it closer to
it might be good when that I think that's better. So let me turn it over to you then. Can you tell us a little bit about, first of all, welcome to the program. Thank you so much I think this is your first time joining our stream. Can you tell us a little bit about this letter? What does it say, and what's the response been that you've gotten?
Well, thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Sharif, for having me. The letter basically calls for the United States to officially recognize Palestine as a Palestinian state, to recognize the national aspirations of the Palestinian people for self-determination, and to put real teeth in the United States call for a Palestinian state. As you know, 147 countries have already done this. You have France now saying they will do it, UK saying that they will do it, Canada saying they will do it, Australia saying they will do it, and basically the United States should echo and follow that lead and the lead of the Arab League, and to do it before the UN General Assembly. We already have 20 signatures. J Street has endorsed the letter. Indivisible has endorsed the letter. MoveOn.org has endorsed the letter. And we're going to be making a big push between now and early September. I don't want to set an unrealistic goal, but I'd love to see us get close to 50 signatures, and we're really going to make a big push for it.
Congressmember Khanna, there was actually, you mentioned Australia announcing it would recognize a Palestinian state. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu just tweeted on social media. He said history, referencing the Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, he said history will remember Albanese for what he is, a weak politician who betrayed Israel and abandoned Australia's Jews. What do you say to that?
Well, I think that's just not consistent with where a lot of Jewish Americans are and where world opinion is. The reality is that you have a very extreme right-wing Likud government. By the way, Likud in its charter talks about Israel being from Jordan, the river to the sea. That's part of the Likud charter. And you have Smotrich and Ben Gvir, who are openly talking about annexation of Gaza and the West Bank. So if you don't have the world come in today and say, we recognize a Palestinian state, we recognize Palestinian self-determination, Likud, you're wrong, you are not going to just trample over Palestinian rights, then you are basically complicit with a an effort by Gavir and Smotrich to deny Palestinians any hope of self-determination forever. And that is why the world is mobilizing at this moment.
Can I ask just a quick thing, Ryan, before you jump in? There's also criticism that many countries, as you mentioned recently, are making this move to recognize a Palestinian state. But there is criticism of this. This is coming at a time when Israel's war on Gaza is continuing to plunge to new depths, and we're seeing now a widening campaign of starvation, famine because of a forced starvation campaign by Israel. We're seeing now plans to ethnically cleanse Gaza City and an invasion of Gaza City. And this has prompted mostly Western European countries to say, okay, we're going to announce that we're going to recognize Palestinian statehood. The criticism of this is that this is, while a welcome move, I think, a largely symbolic one. Meanwhile, the relationship with Israel that matters, the selling of weapons, the buying of weapons, trade continues, and the genocide continues. And also the fact of recognizing statehood should not be a trading card and should not be a political threat for them to stop doing something else illegal. So what would you say to those criticisms about these moves that are coming at this time when the war on Gaza is where it is?
Well, first of all, what's going on is horrific with the man-made starvation of women and children with the ongoing bombing. And certainly the recognition of a Palestinian state is not sufficient, nor is it urgent enough. We need to stop providing military weapons that are being used to kill civilians to Israel and to the Netanyahu government. And that is why I not only supported Senator Sanders' two resolutions, both resolutions in the Senate. I have co-sponsored Delia Ramirez's Stop the Bombs Act in the House of Representatives, which basically would say, stop giving Netanyahu the weapons that they're using to kill civilians. And we need to be taking every legal, moral, political action to stop the killing, to stop the starvation. But I think that the recognition of a Palestinian state is not a bargaining chip, nor is it punitive. It is simply saying that out of this horrendous war, something constructive must emerge. And the only thing that can emerge is a truly democratic Palestinian state with free and fair elections in collaboration with the Arab League in the United States, and that is the hope going forward, and that we're going to offer a vision going forward once this war is brought to an end. So I think it's not sufficient by any means, but it also is not just symbolic. It is a mark that says we can't just paper over Palestinian aspirations for normalization between the Arab League and Israel and just pretend that the Palestinian people do not exist. Those days are over. This has to be a serious commitment from now on for the United States and the nations of the world.
So recently, the number 2 House Democrat, Catherine Clark, said at an event that what was happening in Gaza amounts to a genocide. That was seen by some observers as a signal that House Democrats were beginning to understand whether they care about the issue substantively in any meaningful way, set that aside, but they were starting to recognize that politically it was becoming an albatross, and that it was something that they needed to get right, at least heading into the midterms. A couple days later, she came out and basically withdrew that and said, I didn't mean to say that. And so what can we understand about how House Democratic leaders, like, did you speak to her about that after she came out publicly and said that and before she retracted it? And like, where is House Democratic leadership on this issue at this point?
Well, I just reached out to her this morning saying, can you get on my letter to recognize a Palestinian state? Look, my view is similar to Senator Sanders, that what has happened is absolutely horrific, that the ICJ has already ruled that we need to take every legal, moral, political step to stop the killing and the starvation, that the ICJ and the legal scholars will ultimately rule, hopefully within the next year or two, on what to call it. And there are a lot of independent human rights groups already who have weighed in. But what as we need to do as politicians is to stop it, to stop the military sales that are being used to kill civilians, to recognize a Palestinian state, to make sure that we are not complicit in the killing. And I don't think the caucus is there yet. I think there's a growing number of people there. But the other thing we also have to do is bluntly call out the special interests that have intervened in Democratic primaries. And this is why I reject all PAC and lobbyist money, and I'm for zero super PACs in Democratic primaries.
Yeah, can you, I guess, Sharif, if you have a second, anything, but can you talk about AIPAC there for a second? You've been going back and forth with them a bunch.
Looking for a fight with them. They keep tagging me on saying, well, Khanna is not putting pressure on Hamas. I condemned unequivocally the October 7th attacks. I've called unequivocally for 2 years for the release of hostages. But when I speak out about 60,000 Gazans killed, by the way, even if 2/3 of those, let's just say, are civilians, and a third, what they say, are combatants. No one knows the exact number, but let's just be conservative. That is 3 times the amount of civilians who have been killed in Gaza than in Ukraine. I mean, it is a staggering number. And so when I speak about that, that doesn't mean that I am somehow not condemning Hamas or not calling for the exchange of hostages. But with AIPAC, if you point out anything that is critical of Smotrich or Ben-Gvir or Netanyahu, they come after you, as they have me on social media. And my question to them has been, tell me one thing you have said critical of Smotrich or Ben-Gvir or Netanyahu. And they have not answered that question yet. But look, there's fear in among some of my colleagues about what these groups can do. They spend millions of dollars. They took out my friend Jamal Bowman. They took out Representative Cori Bush. They came after Summer Lee. And you know, there's a sense of, well, do we really want to be targeted? But the tides are changing, and they're not now in the same position that they were even a year ago.
But I think for a lot of people, it's not changing fast enough. So you know, you've been discussed openly as kind of a potential 2028 presidential candidate, and of those presidential candidates, I'd say that you're probably kind of the most outspoken in your criticism of what Israel's doing in Gaza, and the most willing to push back on the sale of some weapons. But nobody yet in that conversation is kind of going all the way to a Zohran Mamdani position, which would say it's apartheid, it's genocide, stop all weapons sales, and frankly, everyone in Israel should have equal rights. That position doesn't seem to have anybody carrying the mantle yet. Why aren't you all the way there yet? And do you think there is space for that in the Democratic Party?
Well, there's certainly space for Zohran Mamdani and people who are passionate about Palestinian rights. Now, I have my own view of it, which is that I think that the best way to get to peace is a two-state solution, and I don't think that that's just lip service. I think you've seen the Arab League now embrace that. You have, in my view, post Netanyahu, an opportunity to do that, including with land swaps, and the United States can actively get involved in facilitating that, recognizing that Palestinian self-determination has to be central. I have come out against military sales to Netanyahu that are being used to kill civilians. Now, I know for some people that's not far enough. They want no funding even for things like Iron Dome. I'm for saving civilian lives. I believe that if we stop the military sales of a lot of these offensive weapons that are basically what Sanders and Delia Ramirez's resolutions call for, I believe you would stop the war. And in terms of what to call it, look, I'm a person of international law. The ICJ has already ruled that we need to be taking actions to stop the horrific nature of what's going on. And they're going to determine exactly what it should be called within the next year and a half. And I will abide by what the ICJ says. This to me is the position that maximizes the chance for peace. But my interest is in stopping the war and in figuring out how we have Palestinian self-determination. And I welcome critiques from the left. You're right, of sort of the conventional people who are seen as potential future leaders of our party in whatever role. I have been probably the most outspoken. I voted against the funding. I have called for a Palestinian state. I've co-sponsored Delia Ramirez's resolution. I've supported both of Bernie Sanders' resolutions. But there are certainly people to my left, and that's what makes democracy healthy, to have that conversation.
You know, we just spoke to a doctor who does a lot of work around helping to bolster healthcare capacity in Palestine. He's volunteered in Gaza. He was amongst a small group of Muslim Americans who were invited to the White House last year with President Biden. I believe this was in April. He walked out of that meeting before it ended in protest. He read out a letter to President Biden and walked out in protest over the administration's backing of Israel in the genocide. And you know, you've spoken about Senator Sanders and other Democrats in Congress who eventually have come around to starting to try and propose legislation to hold Israel to account or to cut off weapons. But the leadership of the Democratic Party very much backs Israel. And how do you contend with that as someone who wants to run for president and lead the party?
Well, putting aside the future, let me just say what I think that anyone who wants to be in leadership should be for. First of all, there were many of us, including Senator Sanders, who voted in April or May, I don't remember the exact date, of 2024, against the funding of weapons to Israel. So it's not just a position that Senator Sanders or I or others have adopted now. We had adopted this position during the Biden administration. I was on innumerable Sunday shows and television saying that the Biden policy on Gaza was disastrously wrong, that the Harris policy was wrong, that we needed a change of direction morally, substantively, but also politically. I was out there arguing and advocating that at least we should have a Palestinian speaker at the DNC. They kept sending me to Michigan, and I kept saying, you can keep sending people like me to Michigan. It's going to make no difference unless the vice president offers Vice President Harris a new direction. I think there has been a tectonic shift in the last 6 weeks within the Democratic Party. You now have Senator Sanders' resolutions getting a majority support of senators. You now have an understanding that what Netanyahu has done and the current Likud party, what they are doing is denying the self-determination of the Palestinian people, as mass starvation, is horrific, and needs to be unequivocally condemned, that there needs to be conditionality to any of the arms sales going forward, that there needs to be a real commitment to a Palestinian state. And I believe that that is a position that can get certainly majority support amongst Democratic voters and Democratic activists. Now, it is not an easy position. You would think that more people who are rumored as future contenders for leadership of our party within the House, the Senate, whether they're going to run for president, would take this position. But they know that they will incur the wrath of some very powerful donors in our party, and they will incur the wrath of certain people in the foreign policy establishment. And so they either choose the easy path, which is just not to say anything, or the conventional path. I believe this is going to be a fault line in future races, and people are going to be judged by it. And some people may find that my two-state approach is not the best one, and they should be free to throw their hat in the ring for whatever positions and articulate their view. But I do believe that the position I'm holding is our best chance to actually have Palestinian self-determination peace and is achievable in the next few years.
I know you have to go in a moment, but wanted to run through the members that you've gotten so far and also get a sense of where you think it'll go next. So you have Becca Balint, who's the Congresswoman from Vermont, I believe Jewish. Andre Carson, Muslim member from Indianapolis, right? Who's been very outspoken critic of Israel for a while. Greg Kassar and Maxwell Frost. Interesting, as both of them had complicated primary races in 2022 that involved DMFI and pro-Israel organizations. They won, and now are putting themselves on this letter. Lloyd Doggett from Austin, Veronica Escobar, where's she? El Paso, I think. Chuy Garcia from Chicago, Al Green from Texas, Jared Huffman, your California colleague, Pramila Jayapal, former chair of the Progressive Caucus, Hank Johnson from Georgia, Stephen Lynch from Massachusetts, Betty McCollum from Minneapolis, who's led on a lot of these letters and on this issue. James McGovern, Shelley Pingree from Maine, Mark Pocan, Wisconsin, Jan Schakowsky, who's retiring in Chicago, also Jewish, Nydia Velasquez and Bonnie Watson-Coleman from New Jersey. So those are the signers so far. I guess the most obvious ones that jump out, none of the four squad members, nor Summer Lee, nor Delia Ramirez, are on that. Did they think it doesn't go far enough? Where have you spoken with Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, and others about this?
I have. Well, part of it is it's the summer recess, so some of them are still evaluating it and may get on.
Things move very slowly in Washington this summer.
And we want to get this out before the UN General Assembly, so there is some time to build support. Some of it is the framework is a two-state solution, and there are people who disagree with that framework, and they may have that concern. It also, the letter calls for a Palestinian state without Hamas, and there may be people who have a concern about some of the prescriptions that.
Well, even Hamas has said that they're open to that. So
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm not saying this is why certain members aren't getting on,
right.
And some people may feel that, to Sharif's point, that right now they're focused on just stopping the slaughter, and this is not the time. But I have, with some people, I've taken an approach of here's the letter, and let me know if you have any questions. And certainly with people in the squad or Delia Ramirez, I mean, the last person to lecture them about what they should do is me. I mean, they've been out in front on speaking about the human rights of the situation. And so my approach has been, okay, here's the letter, tell me your thoughts. And some of them are considering it. More broadly, I'm hoping we can get people like Jamie Raskin, people who voted against the funding in April, now with J Street's endorsement, people who say they're for two states. Well, now's the time to actually make that more than rhetorical. So I'm hoping we will expand significantly.
Yeah, and what's been the reaction, like privately or internally, to it?
Yeah, I think people are open. I think people need to realize how much this is crossing some of the pro pro-Israel organizations and how much they view this as a line in the sand. And so there's understandable pressure on members not to do it. But I think it is such an obvious thing for the United States to do, especially given world opinion and other leaders, that I'm hopeful people will get there and they'll see a safety in numbers and a safety in the organizations that are now endorsing it. But like anything on this topic, it is a charged decision. It comes with consequences for people in terms of their support bases. But I think it is also something that voters now are demanding. And, one of the reasons that people broadly in the Democratic primary care about this, or Democratic base care about this, is the ability to stand up to some of the organizations and money for human rights, signal something broader about a person's values and commitments to a progressive cause, a commitment to human rights, a commitment to recognizing the dignity of people of all backgrounds and faiths. And I think it has become a very salient issue in terms of a person's moral core and progressive values.
Great. Well, Congressman, thank you for joining us here on the website news live stream. We really appreciate it. All right. So we have a few more minutes left, Sharif, if you can stick around, because I wanted to get your reaction to Congressman Khanna's argument. I would say, I'm curious for your take on this. I would say I'm glad that he's out doing what he's doing as a prospective 2028 presidential candidate. Somebody's got to push the envelope further and further and further. On the other hand, to me, it's a real reflection of the poverty of the Democratic Party that represents the most aggressive position at this point. I mean, obviously Mamdani in New York broke out of that, but nobody at the national level.
Right, and the leadership is the most vehement pro-Israel, right? Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, formerly President Biden, Kamala Harris. I mean, what he was just discussing about, not letting a delegate speak. I was there at the Democratic Convention in Chicago. It was one of the most shameful things I've ever seen, that a group of delegates were pleading to be allowed just 2 minutes to speak from the stage, to allow a Palestinian American Democratic Party member speak from the stage.
State representative from Georgia.
Sorry?
Yeah, she was a state rep from Georgia.
That's the one. They even allowed them to vet the speech.
Right.
And they were rejected. And a group of them were sitting outside the convention hall. All of them cried as they spoke at a press conference. And then delegates from the party streamed out of the conference hall, cheering and just kind of like looking at them on the side and just paying no attention. It was shameful. So yeah, we're talking about a party where, the backing of Israel is a completely bipartisan thing, and this genocide could not have happened without President Biden's support. And he was unable to even really get a ceasefire. It was Witkoff that pushed it through on the eve of Trump's inauguration. And yes, I say all this, but at the same time, I remember covering the second Palestinian Intifada. So we're talking 20 years ago. We're at a sea change now in terms of, you couldn't even say the word Palestine without being just completely pilloried and attacked. No Democrat, no politician would say anything. You were just completely maligned in the press. And now, a generation later, because of the incredible work of all these advocacy groups and a lot of campaigning and organizing, mostly by Palestinians, I think we're seeing something completely new. It's clearly in the wider population, and it's slowly filtering into Washington. I don't know that we'll see significant change soon, but it certainly is happening, right? I mean, to have congresspeople and senators calling on stopping weapons sales to Israel, I mean, not in so uncertain terms, but even broaching that is something.
Right. No, that's true.
But
I think
it's not enough. But you're right. It's not enough, and it is sad that that's the accomplishment. But I think it's the beginning of something.
No, this is true. This is true. Yes, if you've come to this in the last couple of years, you wouldn't have the perspective of what it would have been like for even Representative Khanna to say what he said today 10 years ago. They would have been unthinkably radical and outside the mainstream. And now it's, for a lot of Democratic voters, just not enough. I saw a poll recently that showed the support for Israel's, I think the phrasing was something like Israel's military actions in Gaza. Support for it among Democratic voters was 8%.
Wow.
Like it's very hard to find anything that generates as low as 8%. And to have an issue where the leadership is almost 100% on the other side is extremely unusual and opens up a real political opportunity for somebody who wants to grab that.
Yeah, and I think if you saw Mamdani, I mean, a lot of people point to Mamdani. It's a mayor of a city, so it's a much smaller thing we're talking about, but it's the biggest city in America with the biggest Jewish population. And during the mayoral debate, they thought they had him when they said, "Would you go to Israel?" And he said no. He said, "I'll meet Jewish Americans, New Yorkers, Jewish New Yorkers, here in the city." And they went off on playing this clip and really trying to, and he creamed all of them in the election. He didn't just win; he won by a landslide. So yeah, I think if the leadership has any brains, or do they want to win elections, they'll see this is actually a winning strategy,
right?
Politically.
Yeah, I thought Ro Khanna's last point was key, where he said that even setting aside this issue in specific, people see it as a heuristic or like a proxy for whether or not you have any courage, any willingness to fight for anything. Ta-Nehisi Coates put it well, where he said that how can voters expect Democrats to stand up for democracy if they won't draw the line of genocide? And I think for regular voters, that makes sense. Even if they're not following it on a day-by-day basis, like if you're not willing to do something so obvious because you're afraid of the special interests that are going to take you down, then you're going to cave on antitrust, you're going to cave on the minimum wage, you're going to cave on health, you're going to cave on everything. But if you're willing to stand up for an issue where there's really no money on your side, there's no political advantage that's going to organize behind you beyond people. If you're willing to do that and you're willing to take all of the slings and arrows that you're going to take for that, then it tells people you're willing to fight for other things as well. And so he made that point in the end. I think that's right. I think it is a way for a politician to show that they actually have, some spine and some moral courage.
Palestine, Gaza, or Palestine more generally, has become the moral issue of our time. And how you act around it and react to it, I think is it's something that is defining at this point. Whether you're a politician, whether you're a journalist, whether you're an activist, it has become kind of the benchmark because Israel has ramped up to genocide. So, yeah.
Right. Well, Sharif, thanks for joining me here after already a long workday of pushing the Drop Site Daily newsletter
team effort
out into people's inboxes. Much appreciated, and I'll be seeing you soon. And thank you to everybody who watched. Always remember that we keep all of our journalism out from behind paywalls. We want it to be free to the public. It's too important to lock it up. And who wants to deal with all of those passwords anyway? And the only way we can do that is by people voluntarily upgrading their subscriptions or making tax-deductible contribution. We're a 501c. We are contributions to Drop Site are deductible to the fullest extent of the law. You can find out more about that at dropsitenews.com. We have a ways to give section. That's what enables us to do the reporting that we do. On behalf of all of my colleagues here at Dropsite News, I'm Ryan Grimm. Thank you so much for watching today.